This afternoon's number is 32.7 million. That's how many followers the @Potus Twitter account has. Right now, that Twitter account belongs to Donald Trump. Now, that's separate from his personal account, Real Donald Trump, which has nearly 89 million followers. Trump has used his Twitter account unlike any president in history. I think that's the sort of understatement of the last 4 years. He's blasted world leaders, he's blasted CEOs, and members of Congress as well. Most recently, he's been using it to spread baseless conspiracy theories about the election. Trump continued to tweet despite studies that said voters didn't really approve of how he used the tool. A survey from Morning Consult and Politico last year found that 72% of registered voters actually believed that Trump used the tool too much. Even 29% of Republican voters said last year that his use of the platform hurt his chances at re-election. And we all know how the election turned out. Whether he likes it or not, come January, President Trump will have to give up the Oval Office. But does that mean he'll give up the official POTUS Twitter account? Of course, he'll still get to keep his personal account, but that may be subject to harsher rules and regulations. So what does the future of the fraught Trump-Twitter relationship actually look like? Bloomberg technology reporter Kurt Wagner joins us from San Francisco. Kurt, it's great to see you today. I'm wondering about the types of protections that Twitter offers a president that it doesn't offer private citizens. You dig into that in your most recent story. Give us an idea of what those are.
Sure. Yeah, there's really two ways that a president or any world leader, this includes other elected politicians here in the United States, they're treated differently than say, you or I or a regular Twitter user. The first is that if they violate the rules, in most cases, instead of the tweet coming down, which would normally be required, Twitter will leave that tweet up and they'll put it behind a warning label so that people have to click the warning label in order to see the tweet, but it doesn't get taken down. It's still up there for public record. And they do this because they believe that there's some newsworthiness to what the president says, even if it is a rules violation. The second difference is that world leaders, it's a lot harder for them to accumulate what we call strikes against their account. Basically, the idea being if you are a repeat offender, if you are continually breaking the rules, you might get a more severe punishment, right? So typically, maybe if you break the rules for the first time, Twitter will say you have to remove that tweet before we'll let you tweet again. If you keep doing it, they may say we're going to put you in timeout for 12 hours. And then it gets further along, you might get a multi-day suspension. Eventually, you might get banned. Most public figures don't accumulate those strikes. And so for someone like President Trump, who is a repeat offender of Twitter's rules, he hasn't really been building up to a harsher penalty in the way that most of the rest of us would.
Do you think there's a chance, Kurt, that he could get banned from the platform?
It's not a 0% chance. I would be surprised given just how much Twitter truly believes that people should hear from elected leaders, even if he's not still considered a world leader come January 20th. But I would not be surprised if they start to take a stricter stance against him, certainly making him at the very least remove offending tweets versus simply hiding them for him. Possibly the idea of an account freeze, right? If he continues to break the rules, they might say, we're going to put you in timeout. The thing that's really tough for Twitter here is if they were to take some kind of dramatic action, it really opens the floodgates for them to face these calls of anti-conservative bias. It's not something that they're not already familiar with, but they have yet to do something to that degree against, a former president in this case. And I just wonder if they'd be willing to get there, even if they felt he deserved it. I just don't know if they'd be willing to do it for the point that they would be totally roasted by every other Republican politician in the country.
Yeah, I mean, being roasted by Republicans and the threat of increased regulation is certainly scary, but also there's this idea of potentially looming competition, potentially, and I say potentially because it seems like this sort of conservative version of Twitter that's making a lot of headway this week and getting a lot of attention hasn't really caught on in the past, and I wonder if it's going to now. And I want to make sure I'm saying it right. It looks like Parlor, but I think it's supposed to be pronounced Parlay, right?
Yeah, there's some dispute over exactly what the name is supposed to be. I had been referring to it as Parlor as well. I guess it may be Parlay, which is French, but either way, to your point, this is a network that has been around for most of the year here. I believe in June, July, we really started to hear about some of the president's, inner circle, trying to talk up this idea that, hey, we're going to move people over to this conservative version of Twitter. That really hasn't happened. The president hasn't created an account yet. And really what we know about him, right, is that he likes big audiences. He talks about the TV ratings. He talks about the size of crowds at his rallies. The last thing he wants to do is say, hey, I'm going to abandon these 90 million followers I have on Twitter and go over here to Parlor or Parley. And so I don't anticipate that he's going to do that anytime soon, simply because, again, he can really reach such a larger group on Twitter. But I do think it's a convenient kind of weapon for conservatives who are saying, listen, we don't need you. We have this other network over here if we want it. And it'll be interesting to see after January 20th, if that transition from the president himself might actually happen.
We know that the president doesn't want to leave the White House. He hasn't conceded the election. He's not even acknowledging that he lost the election. Kurt, who owns the Potus Twitter handle? Is this something that his team could actually hold on to, or is this owned by Twitter?
I'm told that no, he can't hold on to it. This was an account, and it's actually one of a series of accounts that was created under the Obama administration. And it was intended to go with the office. So there's Potus, there's a First Lady account, there's a Secretary of State account, even the White House account. These were all created and intended to stay with whoever is in that office at that time. So I believe what they did with President Obama was they transferred @Potus to President Trump, but they took all of Obama's tweets under that account and they created a new account as something like @Potus 44, and they archived those tweets there. And so my guess is they'll do the same with President Trump. They'll kind of archive any tweets that are under the current Potus account, but they will give that handle, that username, to the Biden administration when they go in. And because that's kind of done through Twitter, that's not something that the president is going to be able to take with him.
Yeah, just fascinating stuff. Great article. Bloomberg's Kurt Wagner in San Francisco. Thanks so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
The biggest stories the moment they happen from around the globe. Subscribe to Bloomberg Quicktake now for insight in an instant.